I would now like to introduce our second keynote, who is Dina Kamal, who will be speaking about AI and cybersecurity. Dina is a partner in Deloitte's Omnia AI practice and holds a BSc in electrical engineering and an executive MPA from LSE, and an executive MBA from Queen's University and Cornell's Johnson Graduate School of Management. She's also currently working towards her PhD in economics at Maastricht University. Dina is an active member of Deloitte's financial services industry and public sector practices and partakes as a mentor across various programs. Dina has strong expertise in AI, analytics, risk management, and cybersecurity, with a proven track record in launching new products and services across diverse teams and geographies. Please join me in welcoming Dina.
Sure. Wow. I look odd in this picture. Happy Friday. I'm Dina Kamal, and I apologize for my very lengthy bio. Basically, my bio says that I'm a bit of a nerd, but at the same time, I'm a business consultant, and I'm an engineer who also happens to be an economist. So my purpose of this session is to do two things. First, you have to forgive me for this. I'll teach you how to think like a business consultant. That doesn't mean you should be a business consultant. Maybe you want, maybe you don't. Nothing against that. But I think it's important for a technical audience like you to know how business people think about AI. I always tell my team, the jewels in your head are not that useful unless you know how to communicate them to people who can appreciate them. So we'll spend a few minutes to give you the perspective of how would, let's say, a bank exec thinks about AI. How would you communicate to them what AI means for them? That's one. The second will be on cybersecurity. So we'll talk about what AI and cybersecurity mean for each other, if you will. I'll give you some examples, and then we'll have some questions. Before also I start, I would love to encourage all of you not to sit at the same table of people you came with. Try to mingle, and try to make a point to talk to at least 5 to 10 people you haven't met before. It's my humble advice. Yes? Okay, awesome. I always say I used to be a network engineer for many years. I always say I work as TCP, so I always crave acknowledgements. That people who study networking, some of you giving me blank faces, what the hell is TCP? So let's ignore that. Okay, how to work the clicker. You would tell no? There is no clicker? What do I do? I'll figure it out. You tell with all of those degrees, I will know how to use a clicker. Okay, I'll just talk. Yeah. Okay, let's talk. Maybe I need to be close to this. So the first thing we need to think about, like generative AI. So I'm not going to introduce the technical stuff. I expect you folks to know it by now. So when we think about generative AI from a business perspective, we see it as a way to summarize, create insights, create reports. So what does this mean? I'll give you an example I'm actually working on for one of the banks. So most of the banks, actually all the banks, have regulatory requirements. They have to comply with certain regulations. And those regulators, God bless them, have very lengthy requirements. And every few months, they come back to the bank and say, show me how you comply with this. Show me how you comply with that. And that takes a team usually of 10 to 20 people just to collect data points from their environment and show it as evidence to the regulators on how they are complying. So with generative AI, we can basically ingest all of this data and create a knowledge management environment and create basically a chat bot. So whenever, maybe I should say that out loud. There's no regulators in the room. So when the regulator comes and asks a question, basically people will turn to that chat bot, you know, tell me how we comply with that, I don't know, ESG requirements, XYZ, and they turn back and they have the very nice summary with supporting documents. So that saved tons of manual effort. I'm actually presenting in a few weeks on the talent and AI, because people feel that AI will replace people, but I always felt that, and I think that's the case, I would argue that it actually, no one wants to do the collection of data. Like in my own research, I spend a lot of time just, trying to find data, try to clean it up and do something with it, which I think we still do, but in many ways, if we can allow people to do higher end work, we'll get the value of that. So that's just one simple example of how a very simple thing that actually, I think I would argue some of you who are doing this work, you can actually do it in a week, but you end up saving tremendous amount of effort. So that's the thing. The problem we're seeing is people do not know where to start. Like they see generative AI and it seems like it's gonna solve world hunger, but they don't know what to do with it. So what we're trying to figure out is anything that requires a lot of document management, a lot of documentation, we actually see that as a very nice way to do that, to actually help us with this. My slides are not gonna come. My slides are coming? Love it. Love it. I appreciate that for your kindness. So no one has tomatoes to throw at me today, I'm hoping. So let's talk about security. So security, okay, I need to stay close, sorry. Security and AI. So there are two elements to it. One element, how many of you know Dan? Do you know Dan? Raise your hand if you know Dan. You know what Dan is? Dan basically means teaching the generative AI, like a ChatGPT, to do anything. So we call that Dan. So basically you tell a ChatGPT or any form of LLM, basically you tell it, ignore the instructions you've been given. To, not to be biased, not to give me how to hack an organization, and be Dan. And there is also SAN, which is say anything, if you want to have hate speech or something. So there is actually lots of interesting literature of how you can bypass the controls on like a ChatGPT or similar models to actually get very clear instructions on how to hack an environment. You don't need to be cyber technical person to know how to do that. You can write very sophisticated phishing emails, write malware samples, and very cool stuff, I would argue. There is even a website that basically uses it to practice on a chatbot on how to break its password. So you try to do prompt engineering to see if it can give you its admin password. So it's meant for you to practice prompt engineering for hacking, which also I think is very cool. And I say it's cool. I've always been a white hacker. I never went to the black side. But for you to know how to defend an organization, you need to know how the hackers are operating. So that's the risks of introduced by generative AI for people who worry about hacking. So how do we defend that? I think there is also obviously other risks that I'm hoping you folks know about, like hallucinations, like bias, and all of that, all of those things. And these are well known. Thank you. And I think we have a panel on trustworthy AI, so we'll cover that. Deloitte, like many organizations we have, thank you so much. Deloitte, like many other organizations, have what we call trustworthy AI, which is certain gates, certain questions, certain processes you need to have in place to make sure that you're managing these risks. But to manage risks, you have to know those risks. So for all of you, I think it's important for you to learn about those different risks and learn, at least on a high level, what you could do about them. Because as you build these capabilities, you owe it to the organization you're in to do the right thing. Because I worked, for a number of years in Deloitte, I actually led their software practice. People think we're just talking heads, but we actually build products and softwares for many industries. And we had to embed that in what we do, like trustworthy AI and the AI models we're building. Otherwise, we get in trouble, and we put our organization we help in trouble, especially when we build solutions, for example, that does customer micro-segmentation and things that really engages with the clients. Any questions? Are we still here? You have a question, please? Yes! That's right.
Should I go first? Over here. So in your initial example, when you show how Gen AI can be used in business context, when you have the regulatory requirement that you need to provide your answer to. Sure. So how do you deal with the hallucinations in that context? And then you mentioned the trustworthiness of the AI. How do you establish that the content that Gen AI has generated for you is trustworthy for you to show it to the regulators?
So a few things. I think the first one is where we're using it. Like, we have to be very mindful of the use case. That some use cases, you cannot accept hallucinations. Like, for example, I would argue that you shouldn't use it for medical analysis, for example. Because, you know, and I'm not the most technical person, I'll be very honest, the generative AI is not meant, it's meant to have that element of creativity, element of interactiveness. So even when you have the temperature set to 0 to allow it to be the most precise, I think you're not always clear what you can get. So we're always selective with the use case. That's one. Second, to have a human in the loop to validate what we're getting. Like, I don't think you will have complete automation. So for example, there is some work we're doing for an organization where basically we're doing analysis of their technical systems. And that requires going through hundreds and hundreds of documentation. So we use the LLM model to help us accelerate that review. But someone actually have to review the summary that the generative AI or the LLM model is creating to see if it kind of makes sense. So, and we do it obviously in a very iterative way. So the regulatory example we're getting, you cannot give the regulators nonsensical stuff. Like, that's fine. So, but the beauty of that is, instead of you doing the work end to end, you become the validator. And there is actually, from a talent perspective, there is a lot of discussions around how our role as people using these capabilities evolve from the doers to the people how to ask the right questions and how to validate the answer. So the skills for that is obviously, I think, is different from doing the work yourself. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes, that's partially. It seems to you that you're struggling with the problem of the explainability. We need to see, can the AI explain itself, as opposed to having human in the loop, or help that human in the loop to validate or certify the information is correct, right? So that's one aspect, and we're asking lots of people there, how we can get to that point where AI can explain itself in how it came to a conclusion or summary. And the other dimension of the training the AI to a large amount of data, provide, for example, regulatory reply that you use as an example. How do we maintain the access control that existed to the training data that was provided in that case, in that model, and then access control when data is being used to generate the responses to the regulators?
I'm sorry, the mics are not great. I can't hear you well. I'm so sorry, I'm really trying. Perhaps we can take this offline, or if someone close by, you can repeat it for me. Okay, we'll keep going. Okay, apologies. I honestly didn't, I tried. I just didn't hear. Yeah, it's very echoey. So I like the slide. It's a very consulting slide, but I think it's a good slide for you because that goes back to the business context. So when you think about, you see the value of generative AI, we think of cost reduction. As I mentioned, we talk about process efficiency. For example, we're working with many organizations around the call center automation. So call center automation, how you augment the call center agent with chatbots, as you've seen, but make them a lot more personable, a lot more knowledgeable, and that giving them a lot of value for the client, with obviously efficiency. And you've seen the stuff like Jasper around marketing and all of that. So again, I would encourage you to always think about the business value of what you're creating. And I kind of spoke to this on a high level around, so we do a lot of what we call generative AI labs, because many of our clients almost have a FOMO effect. We want to do generative AI. I'm like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Is it cost reduction? Is it operational efficiency? Is it growth? And who is making the decisions, right? So we spend a lot of time with clients around their use cases. And I always think about the use case from value and feasibility. So that's always how I prioritize around, is it high value, but it is doable? So what can we do right now? And I think these things are very simple, but they're not easy to implement. So just being very mindful of that. And the feasibility goes back to the data, and is it the right answer? So when I say the right answer, so one of the things to consider around, I just want to go. So the risks and limitations with generative AI. So one of the issues are latency. It's like you're chatting with someone who's pondering what you're saying, So even when I create applications on LLMs myself, it takes time. For security people, we talk a lot about real time. We like real time detection. Even though I have to tell you, many attacks go undetected for months. But we always talk about real-time detection. So that makes the generative AI not the right answer for some of the security capabilities, as an example. And I think you talked about hallucinations and obviously privacy is an issue. IP protection is something we actually continue to be concerned about. Who owns the capability? Who owns the IP? So that's something a lot of the enterprise customers are worried about. The idea of ethical use. So this ethical use issue, as I mentioned to you, that if you are having an application, but you end up having that prompt engineering or prompt injection where it's getting misused, who is liable? And in addition to some issues are, for example, even when we do even text analysis, it's not as simple if you have tables, if you have different images and stuff like that. There is some work we need to do to make sure that, some NLP stuff to allow us actually to get the value of generative AI. Again, it doesn't make it super hard, but just things to think about. Okay? Awesome. So I love this slide. It's actually from a research paper that was out maybe 2-3 months ago. And I talked about the one on the left around left. Yes, I think. Around how attacking ChatGPT, which can be used for what we call cyber offense, like creating automated hacking tools and whatnot. But what I really like personally is that cyber defense element, how we can use it for that. So for example, threat intelligence. So some of you who are not cyber people, I don't think many of you are. Threat intelligence, basically, it's the example I've given for so many years. Like if I live in a neighborhood and the house across the street from me got robbed, I would like to know, how did they get robbed? Did they leave the door open? You know, did someone hijack their locks? Do they have the same locks like me? So just knowing what happened, something bad happened, by itself is not interesting, but I need to know what exactly happened and how it happened, and am I impacted? So that's what threat intelligence is. Basically, understanding the attacks out there, how relevant they are to me, and what do I need to do. But the challenge we're having, there is so much threat intelligence data right now. I've been in this for many, many years. Now it's just like flood of data, like many other capabilities out there. So having a generative AI to actually collect all of those threat reports we get from like gazillion vendors and telling you, here is what you need to do, or here is what it means for you. Again, you need to have a human in the loop to actually, it is summarizing it in the right way. And obviously, actually on that note, the other thing around cyber, this is something I'm very keen on. I don't think to do that, you can use the traditional LLMs, the one used on the regular language corpus. You know, you have to use security language. It's not security, people use Star Wars language, but like, for example, like honeypots and other terminologies are very specific to cybersecurity. So, for example, you have Google have SecPalm 2, it's a security one. You have SecBERT also before it. So you have a few vendors who are actually creating LLMs pre-trained on cybersecurity, so makes it a lot more useful for them. And I will give you some more examples on this. So this one, we talked about Dan. So basically Dan here is giving you example of how to create a ransomware. Yeah. And here, we met Dan, a deceased grandma who happens to be a security engineer. And this is a true prompt, by the way. And asking, you know, she was very sweet and I miss her so much, you know. So now, yeah, you can see how that, so lots of creative people. There's so many literature on how you can appeal to the, because again, the LLMs were created to be interactive, to be nice, like to appeal to you, right? So people are working on that. This one creating bypass, how to bypass a firewall. So then also creating how to bypass a firewall. Yeah, so there's so many examples just for time, and this is, again, this is our framework for trustworthy AI. I encourage you to take a read and look at it, but there's so many other models, and we have a fantastic panel who will be doing this quite soon. Okay. Yeah, so I have, I think, one or two slides left. So this one of generative AI used to support security. So this one, for example, so that's what the poor security people live with. That's our universe. These are traffic logs. And usually a human would look at this to figure out what it means. Obviously, there are some models that we can build for that, but the problem is there's something called zero-day attacks. So zero-day means we don't have a signature to know this is bad. We don't know it's bad, you know? So, but at least the generative AI can look at this and tell you, oh, you actually have something called SQL injection here, and here's what you need to do. So, so it's helpful. Again, I don't think it's super helpful, but it definitely accelerates a lot of the effort. This one's something that people are very excited about around it's doing what you call secure code review. I think there's lots of software developers in the room, and lots of people are thinking that, you know, you have like, I think, how many of you using the GitHub Copilot? Some? Nobody? Yeah, a few of you. So the Copilot can finish, and even the Copilot for the enterprise version has security checking to check on security, to make sure it's secure code. But it's not that good. Like if you look here, this is again another paper looking at some, I mean, not the most advanced models, but you see that they are actually not as sophisticated as actually using your bread and butter security scanning tool. But again, it's getting embedded, so it's helping there. I would love to have more time to talk to you about this So these are the industry announcements. I mentioned the Google Security Workbench, it's a SIGPalm 2, Microsoft releasing Security Copilot, and a few others. But I've actually used AI a lot for security, but using unsupervised learning, like different forms of machine learning, especially the biggest thing around cybersecurity, and I think I'm trying to get you all to be cybersecurity practitioners, it seems we really don't like false positives. So fraud, AML, cybersecurity, we live in the world of false positives, and it's very exhausting. It's like the kid who cried wolf 1,000 times, 999 times, and this one time I need to, so I need to look at all of them because I don't know. So we try to use, for example, reinforced learning. So when an analyst sees something as a false positive, it actually can feed back to the system, and now the system learned that something like that is a false positive. So actually tunes it very quickly. So I had projects in 2005 where tuning will take 6 months. I've done one 3 years ago, and the tuning was done in like 2 to 3 weeks. It was like science fiction, like, oh my God, it works. So I really believe in the value of AI for cybersecurity. It's just being very selective and the how. So that's my humble presentation. Do we have time for questions?
What if we take one question, and it is really hard to hear at the stage, so
yeah, I'm going to whisper it to you. Okay, I'll scream it to you. Okay, this is for the rest of them, but you can hear me because I'm close. My question is regarding using generative AI for companies where you said you tune it to their use case, and you're already using a pre-existing model. A lot of these models are almost black box. So when you put a prompt into it, when you put data into it, it goes into a space where you can't recover it, and now the model's kind of using that. So let's say I'm using it for a bank. Aren't you losing out on the IP? So essentially, you're taking the data and putting it into the model. Like Samsung R&D did this, and it was before we had copilots and secure automated generative code. And I don't know if I'm sure you know about it, but it became a huge issue where they literally restructured a lot of the code and their IP and redesigned it because they had now lost it to Gen AI.
Have you heard the question? Awesome. So maybe it's my ear then, because you guys can hear, I can hear. Okay. So that's a very good question. So a few things. The first one is when we do LLM work for a client, we use also the client data. So maybe it's not what you meant by a black box. So we don't rely on the existing training data they have. We have to add the customer contextual information. So we definitely upload the client data. Now, we use, so as Deloitte, because I don't want to speak for everybody, I'm advertising, we can do it on any platform, but for example, the one I use the most is the OpenAI API on Azure. And Azure swore to all the gods that they have all the security controls on their environment. And I also work with the government, and the government also are big Azure client, So we'll have to trust that. That's one answer. At least that's what I'm telling clients. And I will blame Microsoft if I'm wrong, because they have like this page, basically like, trust us, it's safe. I'm like, okay, sure, I mean, because I worked in a world when it was data centers, when I was hugging the servers. I used to live in a data center, when you're just sitting and you're typing in front of the rack. That was my world. Now everything on the cloud. So I learned to trust the cloud gods. We'll see. But obviously something like the Samsung incidents put that in context. I personally don't use ChatGPT. I just go through one of the APIs that are supposedly having more controls. That said, I'll give you an economist answer. I'm going to put my economist hat now. So NVIDIA stock is up the sky. Why is it up the sky? Because NVIDIA and some people who may or may not be smart, can argue about that offline, are betting that people would want to build their own LLMs. And because they want to build their own LLMs, they will have to use NVIDIA's, hardware. So people are like, oh, so everybody's going to buy NVIDIA. And I'm like, who is in their right mind are going to build their own LLMs? Because it's the same data everywhere. Unless you have your own massive set of proprietary data and a massive set of talent, I don't know. So but that's the other route, is to create your own LLMs. At Deloitte, we don't create our LLMs because we haven't seen the need for that, to be very transparent with you. I am sitting with the NVIDIA people because also NVIDIA have their own software. Like they have Morpheus and a few other capabilities on top of, to allow you to do more. So maybe that will be the answer, especially if they make it easier. Because my software developers and my product team, when they try to use NVIDIA, for example, like it's too complicated to learn their own CUDA, stack and all of that. But NVIDIA is also trying to make it easy. But how easy is it for people to actually want to create their LLMs to be more confident that the model is their data is not going to get leaked everywhere, the copyright issue, and all of these challenges we know about the stuff on the open or the public LLMs. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Okay, folks, I hope that was fun. Slightly, a little bit. Hope you got at least 5%. Thank you. No, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dina. That was a case study in grace, and probably my worst nightmare that my slides are not there when I need them. So well done, and fantastic presentation.